You're listening to Big World Network.
Pathological Passion, written by Jared and Lisa Kwan, read by Wendy Herman. Episode 4. Elise found herself panning through a list of her favorite books and authors, while periodically having Jarvis read sections. The whole of life is just like watching a film, only it's as though you always get in 10 minutes after the big picture has started, and no one will tell you the plot, so you have to work it out all yourself from the clues, Jarvis said. That is enough, Jarvis, Elise said as she walked over to her desk. She let out a long sigh as she rubbed her head. Did you sleep here last night? Jenny asked as she poked her head into the office. Unfortunately, I had to. Too many items at work were out of balance, Elise said. Ah, so everything is good now? Jenny asked. Mostly. Just reassure your departments that an on-the-spot medical review is normal, and that will take care of most of it, Elise said with a little chuckle. That bad? How did you get appropriations funding to make that happen so fast? Jenny asked. I can't even get a new chair for my office. Mine has been broken for 2 months now. It's all about who you know. I will have your chair taken care of, Elise said, rubbing her forehead again. Why are we having a medical screening? Should I ask, or is ignorance better on this one? Jenny asked. Just the day in the life of R&D, Elise replied. It's not that big a deal. Nothing that would kill anyone, thankfully. You're not doing anything illegal, right? Jenny said sternly. Sorry, I don't mean illegal. I mean against corporate policy. Oh, I know what you mean. Nothing against the rules. I was able to scoop out funding from 2 of my projects and have the health division as well as the compliance division match funding, Elise said as she tapped her desk, then made a sliding motion towards Jenny. Right on cue, the digital document appeared on Jenny's tablet. You have been a busy girl, Jenny said with a whistle. This is pretty heavy-duty stuff. You probably didn't have time to kill your crush last night. Elise instantly closed her eyes and let out a snort as she attempted holding in a laugh. Then she took a deep breath to find Jenny glaring at her. You killed him again? You need to see someone about that. Probably, Elise said with a sigh. After I get some of this cleaned up, I will address that issue. Well, I have to go see some department heads about a standard health screening, and you need to deal with your interns, Jenny replied. Leave some of the cute ones for me this time. No worries, Elise said as she watched her friend walk out the door. Then her attention was drawn to a new issue that was pending. She slid her hand on the desk and made a motion like she was tossing something into the air. As a response, the computer began to project a brief recording of her core project manager, Tim Johnson, reporting that there was an issue with the interns. For a moment, she looked at the ceiling as if in some sort of prayer. Call Tim Johnson, CPM, she said. She took a deep breath and put on her war face as the video appeared. Elise, good to see you this morning. How are you? Tim asked. Tim, I have to apologize for being short, but I need you to sum up the situation with the interns, Elise said firmly. Yes, ma'am. I have received a report that a large core of our interns are not here today on account of food poisoning. However, we suspect from data provided by their phones that they are actually hungover, Tim answered quickly. I'm guessing that none of them knew today was selection day, Elise said with a sigh. No, ma'am. That information was kept only a handful of people, Tim said. Well, send up what we have, and we will work with that, Elise said. We will deal with the other interns when they come back to work. Very good. I will get who's in attendance sent up right away, Tim replied. End, Elise said. She slid her hand across her desk and opened the intern file. With just a few taps of the desk, she was able to see the files of those who were at work and where they were in the building. Not a lot to work with here. I really didn't need this right now, she thought to herself. Off to the side, she could see the notifications from the health division that the mandatory scans had begun in the non-essential areas of the building. Eric wasn't sure why he was on an elevator heading for one of the top floors. His boss, Quinn, had simply said, "I can't believe I am doing this," pushed him into the elevator and selected the 67th floor. I don't think I'm getting fired, he thought to himself. He looked at his reflection to make sure his hair was okay and that his clothes were relatively straight. For a moment he looked past his reflection and watched the elevator rapidly climb over the city, which caused his stomach to knot up a little. Eric entered the lobby cautiously. With no instructions, he felt nervous and confused. He approached the reception desk that lay straight across from the elevator. Excuse me, Eric said as he took a deep breath. Let me see here. Intern Winters, right? The receptionist asked with a smile. Yes, exactly. So where... Miss Mayweather's office is the second on the right, the receptionist answered before he could finish. Eric's face scrunched at the information. He knew exactly who she was, but he was an intern for a completely different division. VP of Technology, Mayweather? Yes, sir. Please proceed there promptly, as you are about to be late for your meeting, the receptionist said with the same smile. He elected not to ask any more questions and proceeded to the office. After all, it wasn't every day that you were going to be late to a meeting with a VP. As he approached the receptionist just outside of the VP's office, he noticed that the woman was pointing to the door. To that, he simply nodded. As Eric entered the large office, he recognized the woman from his dreams, without question. Eric, how are you today? Elise asked without looking up from her desk. It's you, he said just above a whisper as his chest began to tighten up. This response quickly caught Elise's attention and she looked up. Though he seemed familiar, she was certain they had never met before. Excuse me? You don't recognize me? He tried to ask, but his mouth suddenly became dry and the only thing that came out was, You don't... And all the while he was unable to take his eyes off of her. Are you okay? Elise asked with concern on her face. You... Eric managed to say. I mean, it's you... Eric instantly grasped that he was making a bad situation much worse. He realized that he was sweating uncomfortably, and this was, of course, combined with the dry mouth and tight chest. Can you excuse me for a moment? He asked as he rubbed his head. Yes, please. There is a restroom just across the hall, Elise said. She felt befuddled by the intern's reaction. Unexpectedly, Eric felt his stomach tie in knots, and he became a little nauseous. He took a step back to start for the door. Then, after little more than a single drop of sweat, Eric slipped and fell back, hitting his head on the floor. He looked around as he reached back and felt the warm, sticky goo slowly dripping from his head. Eric watched in a daze as a few people ran over to him. We are meant to be, he said softly. Do you know him? Jenny asked, overhearing the statement from the doorway. Elise simply responded with a perplexed look on her face and a shrug. There were nearly a dozen people standing around Eric at this point. What happened? Jenny wondered aloud. He was nervously stammering, then he fell backwards, Elise said. Well, regardless, we need to get him some additional medical attention, Jenny replied. Best not to try and move him ourselves. Agreed. I will get someone up here, Elise said, retreating to her desk. She slid her hand across the desk and opened the emergency line to medical just a few floors below. Is this a priority 1 situation? The emergency responder asked. Yes, Elise said, still feeling perplexed. How did she know him? He looked so familiar. Jenny wasn't sure what to do and found herself holding her expensive scarf against the back of the intern's head to help the blood clot. Then his eyes opened just a little, and his words seemed to be slurred. She is from my dreams, Eric said in a tired tone. Elise? Jenny asked. Do you know what he's talking about? No, I've never seen him before in my life. He must be delirious, Elise said. Tolkien, Pratchett, Carr, he started to say. His eyes rolled up and he went limp.
You're listening to Big World Network.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.